In the hallowed halls of military valor, a story unfolds, a testament to unseen strength, unacknowledged sacrifice, and the quiet triumph of truth. It is a narrative carved not by the roar of jets, but by the silent, resolute heart of a woman who dared to define her own legacy. In front of his entire squadron, my older brother, Major Kyle Sterling, performed a public act of humiliation. He thrust a crumpled $50 bill into my hand, his voice booming for all to hear. "For gas money, Brenda. I know that humble government salary doesn't stretch far in Northern Virginia." My fingers tightened around the worn paper, its rough edges biting into my palm. I stood in a silence that screamed louder than any shout. Little did he know, my signature, affixed to a classified document just last night, was the solitary reason his advanced fighter jet was even cleared for flight today. My name is Brenda Maxwell. At 39, I had learned a profound truth: some worlds are simply not meant to converge. Tonight, I stood in a world that, by their standards, I did not belong to. The officers' club at Andrews Air Force Base always possessed an unmistakable aroma. A rich blend of aged leather from the imposing wingback chairs, the refined scent of expensive bourbon, and the confident, booming laughter of men who believed they commanded the very heavens. It was a realm of polished oak, gleaming brass fixtures, and immaculate dark, blue A-class uniforms adorned with silver wings that reflected the ambient light. This was my brother's domain, and I was merely an unwelcome specter, an anomaly in a simple navy blue dress that felt light, years removed from the decorated uniforms surrounding me. I sought refuge near a towering window, observing the runway lights blink rhythmically in the fading twilight. A silent observer on the precipice of their universe. A voice, sharp and undeniably authoritative, pierced the convivial din. "Brenda, over here!" It was my older brother, Major Kyle Sterling, the undisputed epicenter of any room he graced. He held court near the bar, his F-22 pilot's swagger on full, unadulterated display. He beckoned me with an expansive gesture, and a path miraculously cleared, as if by royal decree. I felt the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes upon me, a mix of idle curiosity and condescending dismissal. I walked towards him, my modest heels sinking into the plush, unforgiving carpet, each step a reluctant capitulation. He draped an arm around my shoulders, not in an embrace of affection, but as an act of casual possession, an unsubtle claim. "Gentlemen, this is my little sister Brenda," he announced to his entire squadron. Then he leaned in, his voice a stage whisper intended for every ear within earshot. "She's the brains in the family. Does all that computer stuff, you know." A few of his comrades chuckled, a low, knowing sound that resonated with their shared understanding. And then it happened. Kyle reached into the pocket of his impeccably pressed trousers and extracted a crumpled $50 bill. He pressed it into my palm, his fingers deliberately closing mine around it. "For gas money, Brenda," he uttered, his smile a fraction too wide, a shade too patronizing. "I know that salary doesn't stretch far in Northern Virginia," he added, the words a carefully aimed barb. My hand clenched around the bill, the paper rough and worn, its creases digging into my skin like tiny, insidious razors. I could feel the searing heat rising in my cheeks, a relentless tide of humiliation. I looked past Kyle, at the faces of his friends. They weren't laughing aloud. It was infinitely worse. It was a symphony of quiet smirks, of pitying glances exchanged over the rims of their glasses. They perceived me precisely as he intended. The poor, struggling little sister. The bookish spinster eking out a living from a menial government job, a charity case at her own brother's moment of triumph. My throat constricted, choked with a torrent of unspoken words. I yearned to scream. I longed to hurl the money back into his sneering face. I desperately wanted to unveil the truth of my existence, to expose what I truly did. But my sacred oath, sworn with my hand upon a Bible, was not merely to the Constitution. It was an unbreakable vow of silence. A silence that, in this agonizing moment, felt like an inescapable cage. So, I simply nodded. A single, almost imperceptible movement. It was all I could muster. My silence was my shield, yet it was also their confirmation. To them, it signified acquiescence, an implicit admission of my lesser station in the Maxwell family hierarchy. My father, Colonel Robert Maxwell, retired, stood a few feet away, nursing a glass of scotch. He caught my eye, and for a fleeting second, I glimpsed not support, but a disturbing flicker of something akin to embarrassment. He offered a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head, as if to convey, "Just accept it, Brenda. Don't create a scene." He then seamlessly reverted to his conversation, dismissing me, my profound humiliation, and my very existence in one swift, crushing motion. The message resonated with crystal clarity. I was an afterthought. Just then, I felt a faint, insistent vibration within my clutch, my secure pager. I slipped my hand inside, my fingers locating the small, familiar device. The screen glowed with a single, encrypted line of text: Black Hawk secure, asset recovered. Good work, General. The air in my lungs turned to frigid ice. A memory, sharp and painfully vivid, sliced through the deafening noise and the crushing shame. It was not a distant recollection. It was from a mere 12 hours prior. I had been in SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility, a sterile, windowless vault buried deep beneath the earth. The only illumination emanated from the cool, blue glow of a dozen monitors. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and stale coffee. I stood over a tactical map, my elite team observing me, awaiting the final decisive call. The very life of a captured CIA asset hung in the balance, and with him, the invaluable intelligence he carried, the intricate details of a meticulously planned surface-to-air missile attack on this very base, Andrews. It was my call, my decision alone. A gut-wrenching, high-stakes gamble predicated on fragmented data and an unparalleled understanding of our adversary's complex cyber doctrine. I issued the order, a single, potent word that unleashed a silent digital tempest halfway across the globe, neutralizing the imminent threat and creating the critical window for the extraction team. Good work, General. The words on the small screen stood in stark, brutal contrast to the scene unfolding before me. The men in this room, reveling in laughter and drink, owed their very lives to the computer stuff I did. My brother, Kyle the celebrated hero, was alive to receive his commendation tonight, because his charity case, sister, a brigadier general he didn't even know existed, had spent the preceding night staring into the abyss to ensure his safety. I gazed down at the crumpled $50 bill in my hand. It suddenly felt impossibly heavy, a profane token for the countless lives I had diligently protected. It was the exorbitant price of their ignorance, the profound cost of my unwavering silence. And as I stood there, utterly invisible in plain sight, I felt something fundamental shift within me. The humiliation still lingered, a dull throb, but beneath it, a new layer was inexorably forming, hard, cold, and utterly resolute. This paper, this insidious insult, was not the first. It was merely the newest scar on a very ancient map. The $50 bill in my clutch now felt less like flimsy paper and more like a heavy, immutable stone. My final words from that hidden chapter, articulated only within the confines of my mind, echoed as I deliberately walked away from the bari. This insult, it wasn't the first. It was just the newest scar on a very old map. I made my way toward the main auditorium, my path leading me down a long, hushed corridor lined with solemn portraits, the Wall of Honor, black and white photographs of stern-faced generals, their eyes seemingly following my every move, their chests heavy with medals earned in conflicts I had only encountered within the pages of history books. Each dignified face served as a profound testament to a specific kind of valor, a loud, visible, and universally acclaimed courage. My brand of courage was inherently silent, meticulously buried beneath impenetrable layers of classification. I paused momentarily before a portrait of a stoic World War II general, his gaze distant and contemplative. The polished glass reflected my own face, and for a fleeting moment I was not a 39-year-old woman, but a 15-year-old girl standing in the warm, pine-scented living room of our Alexandria home on a crisp Christmas morning. That was the inaugural deep incision on the map of my life. The air was redolent with the inviting scent of my mother's gingerbread cookies and the comforting crackle of the fireplace. My older brother, Kyle, who was 12 then, let out a whoop of unbridled joy as he tore the wrapping paper from a massive box. Inside rested a meticulously detailed die-cast model of an F-15 Eagle, the identical jet my father proudly flew. It was an expensive, almost professional, grade collector's item, chosen with discerning care. Dad knelt beside him, his face radiating a profound pride I had rarely, if ever, seen directed toward me. "That's a real warrior's plane, son," he declared, ruffling Kyle's hair with affection. My gift followed. I had just triumphed at the Virginia State Science Fair for a rudimentary encryption algorithm I had meticulously written. My present was a paperback romance novel, its cover adorned with a Fabio-esque man boasting flowing hair and an impossibly chiseled physique. My mother, Eleanor, smiled sweetly and patted my head. "Live a little, Brenda," she'd urged gently, her voice laced with well-meaning concern. "Don't just stare at a screen all day." I had looked at my father, silently hoping for a single word of praise, a nod of acknowledgement for my significant achievement. Instead, his eyes held a familiar, resigned disappointment. He had yearned for 2 sons, 2 pilots. He had one, and a daughter he regarded as a peculiar intellectual enigma. He possessed no interest whatsoever in unraveling this puzzle. That pivotal day, I grasped the immutable truth. My world of intricate logic and complex code would never be as intrinsically valuable as Kyle's world of breathtaking speed and unadulterated glory. The scar was initially small, yet it irrevocably charted the course for all the subsequent ones. A pair of officers strode past me, their animated conversation abruptly pulling me from the depths of my memory. I continued down the hall, the concealed weight in my clutch seeming to grow heavier with each measured step. The most recent scar wasn't a relic from 2 decades past, it was a fresh wound, inflicted just 1 month ago. It was a serene Sunday evening, a cherished tradition in the Maxwell household. My mother had prepared her renowned roasted chicken, but tonight it was remarkably dry and utterly tasteless, a perfect culinary metaphor for the tense, suffocating atmosphere pervading the dining table. The central topic of conversation was the house itself, the historic slate roof of our venerable family home in Old Town Alexandria desperately required a complete overhaul, a daunting project estimated to cost well over $100,000. My older brother, Kyle, perpetually the man of decisive action, meticulously outlined a series of complicated, high-risk investment schemes he was enthusiastically pursuing. He expounded upon stocks and ventures with a self-assured confidence that far outstripped his actual financial acumen. Then, every expectant eye turned to me. It was my father who posed the question, his voice flat, devoid of any genuine expectation. "And you, Brenda? What's your contribution?" The question was not a sincere inquiry. It was a test, a meticulously crafted challenge I was inherently expected to fail. They expected me to be small, insignificant, so that Kyle, by stark contrast, could appear grand, magnanimous. I took a calm, deliberate sip of water, gently placed the glass down, and met his unwavering gaze. "I can wire the full amount tomorrow morning," I stated, my voice remarkably even, a simple declaration of undeniable fact. Silence, a thick, suffocating silence descended upon the table, stifling every sound. Kyle let out a short, disbelieving laugh, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. My mother's hands fluttered nervously, a visible sign of her distress, but it was my father's visceral reaction that carved the deepest, most agonizing wound. He slowly and deliberately placed his knife and fork down upon his plate, the crisp, unnaturally loud clink of metal on porcelain echoing in the sudden stillness. He folded his hands precisely on the table and leaned slightly forward. When he finally spoke, his voice was utterly stripped of all warmth, as cold and hard as unyielding granite. "Brenda." He uttered my name as if it were a foreign word, something unfamiliar he was tasting for the very first time. I believed we had an understanding in this family. The Maxwell legacy, this house, it was built with honor. It was painstakingly paid for with the sweat of men who fiercely fought for this country. With the blood spilled on the sacred battlefield. He continued, pausing deliberately, allowing the full, crushing weight of his words to settle, to sink in. He looked at me, his eyes filled not with overt anger, but with a profound, unshakable disdain. It was not built with ambiguous funds from some nebulous tech contract. We do not need your pity, Brenda, and we most certainly will not use your money to keep a roof over our heads. Your money? He repeated the words as if they were a bitter poison on his tongue. He had summarily dismissed my entire life's unwavering work, my dedicated career, the countless dangerous deployments, and the immense, crushing responsibilities as nothing more than a series of shady, illicit back alley deals. My hard-won success was not something to be celebrated, to be proud of. It was something to be viewed with deep suspicion, something inherently without honor, because it was not earned within the confines of a fighter jet cockpit. The truth my mother so frequently quoted from the Bible, "The truth shall set you free," felt like a bitter, cruel joke in that moment. My undeniable truth was being treated like a contemptible lie. The suffocating silence that followed was eventually broken by my mother, who quickly began discussing the upcoming church bake sale, but it was far too late. The damage was irrevocably done. The final, fragile thread of hope that I might one day earn my father's profound respect had been permanently severed. In his unyielding eyes, I would never be enough, simply because I was not a son and I was not a pilot. My intrinsic worth and the undeniable worth of my life's work had been declared null and void. A sudden, deafening round of applause abruptly jolted me back to the present moment. On stage, Kyle was beaming, waving triumphantly, basking in the unadulterated adoration of the captivated crowd. He was fervently thanking my father for meticulously teaching him the true, profound meaning of honor. I looked at him, then at my father, who was now beaming with paternal pride, his chest visibly puffed out. The agonizing scene from the dinner table replayed itself in my mind, a brutal, endless, looping nightmare. And in that precise moment, sitting rigidly between the two men who so defiantly defined me by my perceived absence of what they so intensely valued, I knew with absolute certainty that the battle was not merely about being seen. It was fundamentally about surviving their suffocating definition of me. Kyle's speech steadily built to a powerful crescendo. He spoke eloquently of legacy, of valor, of the esteemed Maxwell name, and then he delivered the final, insidious blow. It was not a direct, overt attack. It was something far more insidious, a poisoned dart meticulously wrapped in patriotic sentiment. And finally, he declared, his voice thick with carefully modulated emotion, his eyes meticulously scanning the adoring crowd. I want to express my deepest gratitude to my family, my father, who imparted upon me the profound essence of true honor, my mother, whose unwavering support has been my unshakable bedrock. I also wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to the courageous men and women who serve valiantly beside me, and to all the dedicated families who truly comprehend the meaning of sacrifice. The ones who are perpetually on the front lines, whether soaring through the boundless sky or standing firm on the unyielding ground. The ones who genuinely grasp the true price of glory. The ones who truly knew. The words were a perfectly aimed weapon, precise and devastating. With that single, elegantly crafted phrase, he had surgically, mercilessly removed me from our family's meticulously constructed history of service. He had drawn an indelible line in the sand, placing himself, my father, and every single pilot in that room firmly on one side, and me with my silent, unseen, vital work unequivocally on the other. I was no longer merely the sister in the IT department. I was an undisputed outsider, someone who could not possibly comprehend the true complexities of their world. I had been publicly, gracefully, and utterly erased. The auditorium erupted in a thunderous, resounding standing ovation. My mother was weeping openly now, tears of pure, unadulterated pride streaming unbidden down her face. My father was on his feet, clapping with a stiff, precise military rhythm, a rare, brilliant smile gracing his features. They rushed to the easel to embrace Kyle as he descended from the stage. A perfect family portrait of unmitigated triumph, and I simply remained seated. I stayed in my chair, an isolated island of profound stillness in a vast, tumultuous sea of boisterous celebration. A strange, serene calm washed over me, the raw, searing pain from my father's cruel rejection at the dinner table, the hot, suffocating shame from my brother's $50 insult. It all receded, dissolving into the background. In its place, a vast, cold emptiness settled. It was the profound feeling of a fever finally breaking after a long, delirious illness. The intense pain was gone, but so too was the consuming heat, the desperate fight, the fragile, persistent hope that had sustained my efforts for so many years. I was done tirelessly trying to earn their elusive approval. Done foolishly hoping they would one day truly see me. Done being relentlessly hurt. My gaze drifted across the crowded room, past the smiling faces and the self-congratulatory back-slapping, and found him. General Thomas Rodriguez. He was seated in the front row, amidst the absolute highest echelons of military and political power. He was not clapping. He was watching me, his expression utterly unreadable. Yet his focus was absolute, unwavering. Our eyes locked across the considerable distance. He held my gaze for a long, poignant moment, and then he offered the slightest, most subtle of nods. It was not a gesture of comfort, of solace. It was a profound question, a silent, deeply professional inquiry from one commander to another. "Is it time, General?" I did not nod in return. I did not have to. The decision had already been irrevocably made, meticulously forged in the cold, resolute silence that had followed my brother's final, dismissive words. My response was entirely internal, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift within my own body. I took a deep, slow breath, held it for a count of 3, and then slowly released it. As I exhaled, I felt my shoulders, which had been tensed for as long as I could consciously remember, finally, completely relax. It was an act of surrender, but I was not surrendering to them. I was surrendering the immense burden, the heavy, exhausting weight of their impossible expectations, the crushing responsibility of perpetually protecting their fragile egos with my silence, the cherished fantasy that one day they would gaze upon me and truly see a daughter, a sister, an equal. I let it all go unequivocally. In that profound moment, a solemn vow was irrevocably formed, not in uttered words, but in the quiet, unyielding core of my very being. This was no longer about revenge. Revenge was a hot, messy, consuming emotion, and I was utterly done with heat. This was about correction. It was about meticulously balancing the scales of justice. They had painstakingly written their truncated version of the story, a neat, self-serving heroic tale with me conveniently edited out, erased. Tonight, the crucial addendum would be officially read into the official record. The missing chapter was on the verge of being declassified, revealed to the world. And perhaps you, too, understand that profound feeling, that critical moment when you have been pushed so relentlessly far that you do not break. Instead, you achieve absolute clarity, the precise point where silence is no longer a mere shield for your agonizing pain, but the deliberate, calculated loading of a formidable weapon. Have you ever truly reached that undeniable limit? The one where you definitively realize that allowing the unvarnished truth to have its own resounding voice is not an act of aggressive confrontation, but an act of profound, life-affirming self-preservation. My solemn vow, made in that instant, was that I would no longer stand as an impediment to the undeniable truth. I was ready to allow the story to meticulously correct itself. The standing ovation for Kyle finally began to subside, gradually settling into a comfortable murmur of congratulations and polite chatter. My family remained a tight, beaming knot of unadulterated pride near the front of the stage, graciously accepting handshakes and effusive praise on Kyle's behalf. I remained steadfastly seated, a silent, unwavering observer, feeling the cold, steely resolution I had discovered in the quiet hallway solidifying irrevocably within me. The momentous decision was made, the die was unequivocally cast, Now all I could do was patiently wait for the inevitable sequence to initiate. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly. The master of ceremonies, a cheerfully affable colonel from the public affairs office, walked back to the podium. His practiced smile seemed a little strained now, his movements less fluid, betraying a hint of nervousness. He tapped the microphone, the sound a fraction too loud in the expectant, hushed room. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could please have your undivided attention," he requested, his voice suddenly adopting a new, distinctly formal tone. "We have a brief, unscheduled addition to our program this evening." A ripple of intrigued curiosity went through the room. Heads turned, and the casual chatter slowly died down, replaced by a palpable sense of anticipation. In a meticulously orchestrated military ceremony, every single detail is rigorously scheduled, timed to the precise second. An unscheduled addition was almost entirely unheard of, a significant deviation from protocol. At this time, the MC continued, reading from a pristine card that seemed to have magically materialized in his hand. "It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce a special announcement from the esteemed commander of the Air Force Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Agency, General Thomas A. Rodriguez." The instantaneous change in the room's atmosphere was immediate and electric, almost tangible. It was as if a low-pressure system had suddenly and dramatically rolled in, altering everything. The senior officers, the distinguished colonels and venerable generals scattered throughout the audience, instinctively sat up straighter, their previously relaxed postures instantly replaced by an almost parade-ground correctness. My family, who had been basking effusively in Kyle's reflected glory, paused mid-laugh, their expressions shifting. My father's beaming smile faltered, replaced by a deep, questioning frown, a sign of growing unease. He knew, as every single officer in that room intimately knew, that a 4-star ISR commander does not make unscheduled announcements at an awards dinner unless the matter is of truly grave and profound importance. General Rodriguez moved toward the stage with an unhurried, deliberate grace that effortlessly commanded the complete attention of everyone present. He did not smile. His face was an unreadable mask of sober, unyielding professionalism. He ascended the steps with measured precision, shook the MC's hand with a firm grip, and stood resolutely at the podium. He adjusted the microphone slightly, the small movement seeming to stretch into an eternity of anticipation. "Thank you, Colonel," he began, his voice calm, resonant, and easily filling the now utterly silent auditorium. "Tonight, we have rightly honored a true hero, a distinguished pilot who brilliantly exemplifies the profound courage and exceptional skill of our Air Force." He paused, his gaze sweeping slowly across the hushed room before briefly landing on Kyle. "But there exist other kinds of heroes within our military, heroes whose profound stories are not meticulously written in bold headlines, but meticulously crafted in classified code, whose monumental victories are not merely measured in territory gained, but in catastrophic disasters unequivocally averted. They are the silent guardians who vigilantly watch over us from the deepest shadows, unseen, unsung." My heart began to pound with a slow, heavy, rhythmic drum against my ribs. This was it. A flicker of sheer panic, of a lifelong instinct for absolute secrecy, flared intensely within me. For a fleeting moment, I desperately wanted to stand up and shout, "Stop!" But then I thought of my dedicated team, the brilliant, sleepless analysts, the tireless coders, the veritable ghosts in the machine who, like me, inhabited a world of silent, unwavering sacrifice. This monumental moment wasn't just for me, it was for every single one of them. As if on cue, a young captain, resplendent in a pristine service dress uniform, walked purposefully onto the stage. He carried a single, slim manila folder, but this was no ordinary, unassuming folder. It was bound with distinctive red tape and prominently stamped across the front in bold, stark, unmistakable letters was the classification: ECRSAT. As the captain carefully placed it on the podium, I could distinctly discern a second stamp, freshly inked in a bold, diagonal slash across the first, ASIFEED, and beneath it, in smaller, yet authoritative type, by order of the President of the United States. A collective, barely audible gasp rippled through the stunned audience. General Rodriguez placed a deliberate hand on the folder, but did not open it immediately. He allowed the tension to meticulously build, a true master of psychological timing. "Today," he declared, his voice dropping slightly, drawing every ear in the room closer, hanging on his every word. "The President has authorized the declassification of one of the most critical and profoundly successful intelligence operations in the entire history of modern warfare. Operation Black Hawk." He then slowly, deliberately opened the folder. The silence in the room was no longer merely quiet, it was a physical presence, a heavy, suffocating blanket that mercilessly smothered all sound. I watched my family, transfixed. My mother looked utterly bewildered, her trembling hand clutching my father's arm tightly. My father was leaning forward, his brow deeply furrowed in intense concentration, his mind furiously attempting to connect the seemingly disparate dots. And Kyle still sported a self-satisfied smirk on his face, a faint, arrogant curve of his lips. He arrogantly believed this was merely some grand preamble, some abstract, eloquent speech about the ethereal nature of modern warfare, before they inevitably reverted to celebrating him, to lionizing his perceived glory. He had absolutely no idea. He did not comprehend that the storm, which had been relentlessly gathering on a distant horizon for years, was not merely about to break. It had just made a brutal, unforgiving landfall directly within the confines of his living room, his very world. General Rodriguez's voice resonated with profound historical gravity. He was not merely delivering a speech, he was testifying before the annals of history itself. He spoke of Operation Black Hawk not in vague, generalized terms, but with chilling, meticulous precision. He vividly described a vast, global terrorist network poised to unleash unimaginable chaos, a plot so intricately sophisticated it had successfully eluded every other major intelligence agency on the planet. Behind him, the massive screen flickered vividly to life. It did not display faces. It displayed something far more terrifying, far more impactful to those truly in the know. Cascading lines of malicious code, intricate satellite maps adorned with converging attack vectors, and chillingly intercepted communications that spoke volumes of imminent, catastrophic success. This network, the general stated, his voice like unyielding steel, was not defeated by conventional bombs or traditional bullets. It was meticulously dismantled from the inside out, in a silent digital war fiercely fought across 3 sprawling continents. A single commanding officer, operating under extreme, almost unbearable pressure and with agonizingly incomplete intelligence, made a series of high-risk decisions that directly contravened established protocols. My breath caught sharply in my throat. I could vividly see the entire operation unfolding once more in my mind's eye, the incessant 300 AM calls, the gut-wrenching, impossible choices, the precise moment I definitively overrode a direct recommendation from a highly respected senior analyst, implicitly trusting only my own profound instinct. That officer's final, decisive command, Rodriguez continued, his unwavering gaze sweeping slowly across the stunned room, not only neutralized the entire network without a single American casualty, but also led to the recovery of assets that prevented the downing of a military transport plane. It saved the precious lives of hundreds of American service members. The screen behind him abruptly changed. It now showed a single, stark image, the elegant silver and blue design of the Air Force Cross, the second highest military decoration that can be awarded to an esteemed member of the United States Air Force. A collective murmur rippled through the room, a sound of profound awe and unadulterated disbelief. The Air Force Cross was a legend, a mythical symbol, a medal reserved for heroism so profound it bordered on the ethereal. It was fundamentally a pilot's medal, a warrior's medal. It was emphatically not a medal for someone who merely worked with computers. The world seemed to slow down, to stretch into an agonizing, deliberate crawl. I could feel the collective gaze of the entire room beginning to subtly shift. 1,000 points of burning curiosity, desperately attempting to locate the unassuming subject of this incredible, untold story. The commander of Operation Blackhawk, General Rodriguez announced, his powerful voice reaching its dramatic peak, reverberating through the hall. The youngest woman in the entire history of the United States Air Force to be promoted to the distinguished rank of Brigadier General in Air Force Intelligence, is in this very room with us tonight. He paused, allowing the gravity of his words to sink in. The silence was absolute, a profound, terrifying vacuum that seemed to suck every ounce of air and sound from the vast auditorium. I watched my family. My mother's initial confusion had morphed into a dawning, horrified understanding. My father's face was a rigid, impenetrable mask of utter disbelief. His mind, I knew, was furiously attempting and failing to process the earth-shattering words he was hearing. And Kyle, the arrogant smirk had long since vanished from his ashen face. His jaw hung slack. He looked like a man who had just encountered a terrifying ghost, utterly drained of color. General Rodriguez turned his body slightly, his unwavering gaze locking directly onto our table, onto me. "It is my profound honor," he declared, his voice booming with the immense weight and authority of his prestigious office, "to invite to the stage Brigadier General Brenda Maxwell." The name hit the room like a sonic boom, a concussive force. For a split second, there was nothing, just stunned, absolute silence. Then it began, not from my family, but from the front rows. A senator was the first to rise, then another general, then another. Within mere seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet, a rising tide of respect. The applause didn't just commence, it exploded. It was a deafening roar, a tidal wave of sound and profound respect that crashed over me, so overwhelmingly powerful it felt like a physical force. I pushed my chair back and slowly stood. My legs felt strangely steady, rooted to the ground. I walked the long, solitary path to the stage, each step measured and absolutely sure. I was no longer Brenda, the awkward, overlooked little sister. I was General Maxwell, and I was unequivocally answering a sacred summons. On stage, General Rodriguez's face was etched with profound, unadulterated respect. The young captain who had diligently brought the dossier now presented a velvet-covered box. Rodriguez opened it, reverently lifted the Air Force cross, and with practiced, almost ceremonial hands meticulously pinned it to my simple navy blue dress. The weight of the cold metal was real, solid, a tangible counterpoint to a lifetime of being made to feel insubstantial, utterly insignificant. He stepped back, raised his hand crisply to his brow, and rendered a perfect, impeccable salute. I returned it, my own movements precise and automatic, ingrained by years of rigorous training. He gestured subtly to the podium. It was my turn. I stepped up to the microphone, looking out at the vast sea of faces, the indistinct blur of uniforms and elegant evening gowns, all turned expectantly toward me. For the very first time in my entire life, I did not flinch from their collective gaze. I did not desperately search for my family in the immense crowd. I didn't need to. My impending speech was not for them. "Thank you, General Rodriguez," I began, my voice clear and amplified, effortlessly carrying to every single corner of the expansive room. "This profound honor does not belong to me alone." I paused, allowing the silence to settle once more, to permeate the space. "It belongs to the unseen, to the brilliant analysts who willingly sacrifice their nights, to the tireless coders who relentlessly chase ghosts through networks, to the gifted linguists who painstakingly find meaning in whispered fragments. It belongs to the quiet professionals, the ghosts in the machine who stand a silent, eternal watch so that others may live freely in the light." I looked directly at the captivated crowd, my gaze sweeping over every single one of them, equals in this singular, momentous instance. "On behalf of all of them, I thank you." That was all. I stepped back from the podium, short, professional, and entirely to the point. Not a single word about family, personal sacrifice, or individual struggle. My profound silence, the very quality they had always mistakenly interpreted as a weakness, had just delivered the final, devastating, undeniable blow. I had not merely recounted my personal story. I had powerfully claimed my rightful place within a far grander narrative, a narrative so utterly beyond their narrow comprehension that it rendered their small, petty judgments entirely meaningless. The applause that followed was even louder than the first, a sustained roar. It was a sound of deep, resounding, unequivocal respect. And as I stood there, bathed in the bright stage lights, I finally felt the persistent chill of the last 39 years begin, imperceptibly, to thaw. The thunderous applause from the main hall gradually faded to a distant roar as I followed a discreet aide down a quiet, carpeted hallway. The public portion of the evening was now definitively concluded. The private reckoning was about to commence. The aide led me to a small, private lounge, a VP waiting room, I presumed. It was tastefully decorated with plush leather armchairs and elegant prints of historic aircraft. I knew, without needing to be told, that General Rodriguez had meticulously arranged this. He had anticipated the inevitable fallout and thoughtfully provided a secure, neutral ground for it to unfold. A true strategist, I mused, always thinking 3 moves ahead, even in complex social situations. I didn't have to wait long. The door softly opened, and they entered. My family. My mother, Eleanor, her face a mix of tear-streaked bewilderment and profound confusion. My father, Robert, his military bearing visibly crumbling, replaced by a deep, wounded confusion that etched itself onto his features. And Kyle, my brother's face, was a mask of raw, bruised ego. His complexion a mottled red, a stark canvas of shame and barely contained fury. The door clicked softly shut, sealing the 4 of us within a sudden, suffocating silence. It was Kyle who finally shattered it, his voice explosive in the small, confined space. "Why?" he snarled, taking a furious step toward me. "Why would you do that, Brenda? You made me look like a complete fool in front of everyone. My squadron, my commanding officers, everyone." His anger, so predictable, so utterly self-centered, didn't even register as a sting. It was just noise, a meaningless distraction. Before I could even formulate a response, my father spoke, his voice trembling with a hurt that, for the very first time, felt truly genuine. "Brenda, honey, why didn't you ever tell us? A general, the Air Force Cross, why would you possibly keep that from your mother and me?" I looked at them, truly looked at them, and a profound, aching sadness washed over me. Even now, after everything that had transpired, their initial questions revolved entirely around themselves, how it made him look, why they weren't told. My moment of profound recognition was still merely a distorted reflection in the mirror of their own self-absorbed feelings. The exhaustion I felt was immense, a bone-deep weariness born from a lifetime of this relentless dynamic. But with the exhaustion came an unparalleled clarity. "I didn't tell you," I began, my voice calm and measured, the precise tone of a seasoned briefer, not a wounded daughter. "Because I took an oath of secrecy, an oath that both of you, as military men, are supposed to understand better than anyone." I held my father's gaze, unblinking. "It's the same reason you never discussed the intimate details of your reconnaissance missions over Vietnam, Dad." I allowed that profound truth to sink in, to resonate, before continuing. "And I didn't tell you because on the rare occasions I attempted to share even the smallest, unclassified part of my world, I was consistently met with dismissal and utter contempt." I turned my full, unwavering attention to Kyle. His face was still a thundercloud of righteous indignation, a storm brewing. "You don't look like a fool because of me, Kyle," I stated, my voice devoid of any heat, a simple, undeniable statement of fact. "You look like a fool because of your own profound arrogance. Because for 20 years you never once genuinely asked a single serious question about my life. You just assumed you knew. You meticulously created a grotesque caricature of me in your head, the boring, underpaid IT sister, and you treated me accordingly." His mouth opened, then slowly closed. For the very first time he seemed utterly at a loss for words. Then, I faced my father. This was undeniably the hardest part. The anger had completely dissipated, and what remained was a vast, hollow ache in my chest. "And you, Dad? I said, my voice softening just a fraction, a whisper of old pain. You meticulously taught me about honor, but you only possess the capacity to recognize the kind of honor you can visibly perceive, the kind you can meticulously polish and proudly hang on a wall. I desperately tried to help this family. I tried to offer you the most honorable thing I could possibly offer, my unwavering support, painstakingly earned through my selfless service. And you mercilessly threw it back in my face. You contemptuously labeled it ambiguous funds. You implicitly implied it was dirty, tainted. I took a deep, shuddering breath, the air in the room feeling thick and oppressive. I have spent my entire life tirelessly striving to earn your elusive respect. I now understand that it was an utterly impossible mission. You simply do not respect what you fundamentally do not understand. I looked from my father's shocked face to my brother's stunned silence, then to my mother's silent, glistening tears. I no longer require your permission to be profoundly proud of who I am or what I do, I declared, and the words felt like an unparalleled liberation, a weight lifting. But from this day forward, I absolutely require your respect. It is not a request. It is a non-negotiable term of engagement. The silence that followed was distinctly different from the one before. It was not empty. It was heavily filled with the devastating wreckage of a lifetime of ingrained assumptions. The very foundation of our entrenched family dynamic had been utterly pulverized, and none of them knew how to stand on the new, uncertain ground that now lay beneath them. I did not wait for a response. There was nothing more to say. The briefing was conclusively over. I turned, walked purposefully to the door, and quietly let myself out, leaving them behind in the quiet, suffocating fallout of the truth. As the door clicked softly shut behind me, I felt no triumphant exhilaration. I felt no consuming anger. I just felt a profound quietness. The quietness of a battlefield after the brutal battle is finally over, when the only remaining task is to survey the extensive damage and begin the long, arduous walk home. 6 months gently passed. The lingering chill of that transformative night at the awards ceremony slowly began to thaw, gradually replaced by the warm, golden hues of a vibrant Virginia autumn. The majestic maple trees gracefully lining the charming streets of Old Town Alexandria were ablaze in brilliant, fiery shades of yellow and crimson, a breathtaking spectacle. For the very first time since that pivotal ceremony, I was back at my parents' house. Not for a confrontation, but for a quiet, peaceful Saturday afternoon. The very first thing I noticed upon entering the elegant living room was the distinguished mantelpiece. The heavy, polished marble slab above the grand fireplace had always served as the Maxwell family's revered shrine to its own self-proclaimed legacy. For as long as I could consciously remember, it had been prominently dominated by two significant photographs: a handsome, stoic black and white portrait of my father, a young colonel standing proudly in front of his F-15 fighter jet, and a dynamic, vibrant color shot of Kyle, grinning confidently beside his formidable F-22 Raptor. They were iconic symbols of a very specific, tangible kind of glory. But now there was a third. It was my official portrait. Brigadier General Brenda Maxwell in my formal service dress uniform, the gleaming silver star proudly adorning my shoulder. The Air Force Cross was meticulously pinned neatly on my chest, its vibrant blue ribbon a stark, beautiful contrast to the dark, somber uniform. The ornate frame was identical to the other two. My picture was not relegated to the side, nor was it smaller or larger. It stood majestically in the precise center, in a position of undeniable, equal prominence. We were three, not two, a harmonious trinity of service. As I quietly took it all in, my father walked slowly into the room. He saw me looking intently at the mantel. He did not say anything at first. He simply walked over, his steps slower than I remembered, burdened by age perhaps, and stood silently beside me. He reached out a hand, his fingers gnarled from countless years of gripping a control stick, and gently brushed them against the cool glass of my picture frame. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible touch. A silent acknowledgement, a poignant apology, a fragile peace offering. He cleared his throat, still not looking directly at me. Your mother wants to know if you want your burger medium or medium. Well, he said gruffly, his voice betraying a hint of unfamiliar tenderness. Medium is fine. Dad? I replied, my voice softer than I had expected it to be, a gentle concession. He simply nodded and walked out toward the backyard. But the profound weight of his small, almost insignificant gesture remained, hanging in the air. It was more eloquent, more deeply meaningful than any elaborate speech he could have possibly given. The air in the backyard was filled with the familiar, comforting aroma of grilling burgers and the fresh scent of newly cut grass. My mother was fussing gently over a large bowl of potato salad, and for the very first time, her fussing did not feel like a judgmental imposition, but simply like genuine motherly concern. The pervasive tension that had been a permanent, unwelcome resident in our family gatherings was finally gone, dissipated like smoke. In its place was a quiet, slightly awkward effort to connect, to rebuild. It wasn't perfect, by any means. But it was real. I was sitting comfortably on the patio steps when Kyle approached. He was holding 2 cold bottles of Sam Adams Boston Lager, condensation beading on the dark brown glass. He handed one to me without a single word. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the lazy smoke curl gracefully up from the grill. I read some of the declassified articles about Operation Black Hawk. He said finally, his voice low, his gaze fixed intently on the bottle clasped in his hands. He deliberately wouldn't look at me. It was unbelievable, Brenda, what you did. He took a long, reflective swallow of his beer. I waited patiently, knowing there was more to come. He turned to me then, and for the very first time, I saw not the arrogant, swaggering fighter pilot, but simply my older brother, vulnerable, humbled. His eyes were filled with a shame that was undeniably real and profoundly deep. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words barely audible, for everything, for the $50, for all of it. I was a jerk, a jealous, arrogant jerk. 2 powerful words. I had waited an entire lifetime to hear them. And now that they were finally here, they didn't bring a sense of triumphant victory. Instead, they brought a profound sense of peace, a quiet, gentle closing of a long, festering wound. I managed a small, soft smile. I know, I said simply. He let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 6 agonizing months. He raised his bottle. To you, he offered, his voice sincere. I raised mine to meet his, the soft clink of glass a small, clear note in the crisp autumn air. To us, I gently corrected, my voice imbued with a newfound tenderness. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile this time. Welcome home, General, he said, his voice filled with respect. Welcome home, Major, I replied, the titles now holding a new, shared meaning. We sat there, quietly sipping our beers, as the sun began its majestic descent, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of orange and purple. The scars were still there. I knew they always would be. They were an indelible part of the intricate map of who we were, who we had become. But they were no longer open, festering wounds. They were now cherished reminders of a fierce battle fought, and in its own profound way, won. We were a family learning to speak a new language, one not based on outdated assumptions or suffocating expectations, but on the quiet, steady, and unbreakable grammar of mutual respect. My true legacy, I realized with startling clarity, wasn't merely the gleaming medal on my uniform or the proud photograph displayed on the mantel. It was this fragile, hard-won peace, the momentous breaking of a destructive cycle. And it was more than enough. My story found its profound peace not in a grand, public victory, but in a quiet, intimate conversation over a backyard grill. It was a peace meticulously built on the new, powerful language of respect, and perhaps my story resonates with you, reminding you of your own journey. Perhaps you too have felt invisible, or had your inherent worth dismissed by the very people who should have seen you most clearly, most lovingly. If you possess a story akin to mine, one of silent struggle, of hard-won strength, of enduring spirit, I sincerely hope you will share it in the comments below. Your voice matters. Your experience holds profound value,